Live. I can do that right now.
Yeah. All right.
My name. Rename. All right. Set.
Okay.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing good.
Today I'm doing green tea with jasmine, just like you did last time.
So today I am doing karak.
Oh wow. Oh
And
wow.
I found this thing at a one of these local halal stores.
Mm.
And so I thought I'd try it, and I love it because it reminds me of Dubai. When I would go
Mm-hmm.
and visit my parents at all the gas stations, they would show you, they would just serve you if you wanted like a little bit of, shy. They would
Mm.
call it karak there. And so they would always say karak, 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 karak. And it was like, it was crack. Like it was so addictive. We were buying these little chai karak
Maybe
teacups.
that's where it got its name from.
Yeah, I don't know where they call it karak there, but it's yeah, it feels like it's like crack, and it is like crack. You just keep drinking them.
Oh,
So anyway, I'm enjoying my karak.
yeah,
My
that's good.
reeling too. So, it's nice to come back. It's been a
Yeah.
week of thinking about our last conversation and trying to implement that too. Just to remind everybody, last week we talked about, we started out this whole series is, about trust. And last week we started talking about really the ultimate trust, the trust in God that we all want and that we're striving for, and what gets in our way and why, what's blocking us in a way. And one of the biggest takeaways from that was to really start creating your own Musa trust story or journal, right?
Mhm.
And today we want to take that one layer deeper and start talking more inward about the next layer, which is trusting ourselves. So many of us, from personal experience as well, as much as we want to trust in God and get that established, that tawakkul, many times we don't even feel like we trust ourselves. Um,
Mhm.
we almost like block ourselves. We don't feel like we're worthy, like we aren't so capable that we can actually achieve that trust in God, like what we see in others, like, oh, that's not going to happen to me. That's
Yep.
great for everybody else,
Yeah.
but that's not going to happen to me. And so you end up holding your own self down, like your own, not just physical, like your ruh is just like you're holding your whole self down when you can't even trust your own self to say, yeah, I want that and I can get that too.
Yep.
You can
Exactly.
so, I thought maybe we can start about with just talking about what does it mean? What do we mean by this when people say, I don't trust myself? And then there's just so much doubt and uncertainty about yourself, about not being capable. And, when I was thinking about this, I kind of saw it in two different perspectives. There's the
Yeah.
trust in ourselves when it comes to like actions, right? And
Yeah.
dealings. When you feel like, you're
Accomplishing stuff. Yeah.
yeah, it's just the practical stuff. Like you're gonna fail. You're not worthy of this, that, and you value, yourself less
Mhm.
than who you really are. And then there's the other part of the trust in ourselves when we talk about more spiritual matters.
Yeah.
That's even deeper, which is like, I don't feel worthy of God's love, you know,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
or his acknowledgement, or the fact, when we have doubts about why our prayers or our du'as aren't being answered, like we feel like we're not worthy of
Mhm.
him even responding to that. So I feel like there's two different elements to trust in ourselves that I thought we can talk about. And maybe the first one we can talk about is just is the practical part, like the trusting in
Yeah.
your actions and your dealings in life and things like that.
Yeah, and I think somehow, I mean, they're kind of connected, right? Although they may not appear to, but it's just like trusting yourself is trusting yourself at the end of the day. They're kind of connected in a way. And when you develop that in all the areas, basically. It does impact all the areas.
Yeah. Um, so where does this trust come from? Like, where do you think it originates from and like where it developed from?
Yeah, and I think this is a very important thing to really address first, right? I mean, you kind of like address in terms of what trust, what do we mean when we say that? And I don't think that any of us doesn't have this. And you might have people who just like show that they are very confident, but a lot of the times that's an overcompensation. It's not as established and grounded. And that's why asking this question, where does it originate from? Where does this trust come from? You
Like, is
know?
it something that I know, sometimes you get sucked into these conversations of it or expectations in your head of like, is it something that happens to me? Or is it something that I acquire,
Yeah,
which is different?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Is it something that, because that's how people see it a lot of the times, like, yeah, you kind of like how you were brought up, how your parents did to you, or whatever it is, like your upbringing that happened. It can either bring it up for you, like have you be confident, have that trust or not, right? A lot of the times people think about it this way. Is it something that just like happened? It's because of this and this and this that I don't trust, or because of this and this and this, that's why I trust, right? So that's definitely, and I mean, it's good to really pause for a second and think, where does this originate from? Where does this come from? Is it something that I can acquire, or is it something that happens to me?
Yeah.
Generally speaking, like if you have a first thought, what would be, I mean, the kind of like spontaneous thought that you would have when you think about it would be like, yeah, well, I mean, it just develops out of just like, again, whatever has happened to you and you were able to succeed and things were kind of going right, then I would trust. Things were going, I'm failing, then I wouldn't trust people. That's how you would think right away, that it originates from whatever experiences you've had, right? And if you failed or it.
Yeah. I mean,
Whereas if, yeah,
for me, it is something that, personally, it is something that is acquired,
yeah,
um, but it takes work, and a lot of realization, and sometimes the work is hard work,
yeah,
or
yeah,
it's that, you go down one route and it doesn't look the same way as you thought it would look. And I mean, I don't want to be theoretical here. So like from a practical perspective, um, like for me, when it comes to trusting, like from a spiritual, let's just talk about that. It came from a lot of work of deciding that this is what I want. I want more trust. I want to develop a higher connection. I really want to develop, get there. But um, realizing that what other people's perspective or what it looked like for others may not look like for me,
yeah,
and kind of clearing out that muddiness of like there is a lot of avenues, but
yeah,
it's acquired, like you can have it, but and it doesn't, your story isn't somebody else's story, and somebody else's story doesn't have to be your story.
great, yeah, absolutely,
And it isn't, I think because there's a lot of, like I talk to some people and they just, there is an element of some people get cynical about life and saying, well, they expect like a lightning bolt moment,
yeah,
like
yeah,
bam, and like they have this experience, and
yeah,
it automatically comes in waves. And it's like, no, there's a work in progress here. It doesn't just happen automatically, but you have to, as long as you're willing to really try and go down that seeker's route of
yeah.
that journey, right?
Yeah, and it could be that as you're going through that route, at one point it would just click, but it does require that kind of working towards it, as you're saying. And I would want to, like, there's something to look into, going back to what you were saying. And definitely we want to address what you said regarding like, you develop your own path of it rather than just like seeing what others. Before that, let's just look at what we said regarding trusting. Where does it come from? Where does it originate from? And for me, I could tell you that what made the biggest difference is realizing that my trust in me comes and springs from my trust in my creator, in my owner. in God. Because when he made me and he made everything perfect, and I trust that everything that he made works and it's beautiful and it's great, and I get the wisdom behind everything that he made, and I understand that he made me for a purpose, right? And he created me for a purpose, and he is requesting from me that, and he's asking me, and he's holding me responsible for that. So that means he equipped me with whatever it is that I need.
Yeah.
So me trusting his design and trusting that part, and it's not, you know, it's just like getting that clear for yourself. And you, when you trust him, then you trust yourself because you are his and you're
Right.
his making. So your trust springs from that. And when it springs from that and you develop it this way, it's kind of like very foundational, grounded in it. It's like so, because it's not just springing from just like, yeah, well, I mean, try and error and I'm seeing it. No, it's actually grounded in your understanding and your belief that, hey, I mean, I'm not talking about me who I don't know, maybe I'm just like experimenting with things. No,
Right.
I'm talking about Allah, the creator of the universe. I am part of his creation. So everything that he's designed is working and it's perfect. You know, we trust that the sun is like doing what it's doing and the earth is doing what it's doing and it's rotating and you have what's happening and it's like perfect and it's accurate. Our bodies are just like perfect and accurate in how they're working, and we see when something would be lacking how everything would fall apart. So I remember, oh, when I developed all that understanding and you see it in the smallest minute detail, then you know that how he designed even your body physically. He designed you as a nafs, as a self, even as an ego. He designed you in a way that it works. And the
Yeah.
way that he put you as a human being, you have all of that. Like you have your body, you have your mind, you have your nafs or yourself or your ego, whatever you want to call it, and you have your soul. So all of that put together, and the way that you are made is like so great and beautiful. And so when I ground myself in that, I'm just like, yeah, of course you will try, even though you might have some stuff that come across and come around and you might kind of fail, but then afterwards you're like, no, I am, that's what I'm trusting. And the difference is that, again, it's grounded in your trust in him. It's springing from your trust in him.
Yeah, I mean, I love that perspective and what you're saying, because if you're grounded in that, then you see also that your weaknesses and what you think of your weaknesses are and your flaws and what's holding you back and all your fear, that's also, from him. Like it's a
Yeah.
part of your nature and you're created whole. So like you shouldn't be putting yourself down so much and just doubting yourself, because
Yeah.
it's part of the package
It's
is,
exactly.
you know, and if that's part of the package, that your weaknesses and your flaws and your failures and all of this is it
Yeah.
just becomes a learning experience.
Yeah, and even what you went through in life, exactly, even what you had to feel, like, I get it, we're responsible in doing what we're doing. I'm not saying not to do that, but whatever path you went through is what you had to go through. I did my own path and you had your own path, and whatever it is, we were made to make these and to kind of like flaw and to fall and to experiment and do all of that. You know, the way this is how we're designed. So when you trust the design,
Yeah.
it's that's it. You don't, then you are like, and that's why when I say where it comes from, it's really in here. You don't even get it from anywhere. It's here. All what you need to do is just strengthen that connection and that trust in your creator. Then you're just going to trust, well, if I am saying I'm yours, and if I'm saying I belong to you, and if I'm saying you created me and you made me, then I better trust me.
Yeah.
So it's not, and that's why it's different from, again, there are people who have this confidence that's kind of compensated. No, I can make it. I could, you know how we have a lot of people who are just like, I'm a go-getter, I'm doing it, I
Like
could
I'll
do
pull
this.
myself up on my bootstraps and I'll do it
Exactly.
alone.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a compensation. A lot of times it might lead to arrogance. It might lead to whereas when you're coming from Allah, it's coming from your trust in God. It's not, you don't even have arrogance. You don't even have that, oh yeah, well, it's because I'm so great. Yeah, you are great, but where are you from? You're always grounded in your connection and in your trust in him. That's very foundational. So the more you trust him and you know you're his and you're connected to him, the more you trust you. And I would recommend, I mean, I would really, it's like highly recommend, just go this route. You're
Yeah,
is genuine this way in yourself.
yeah. I mean, it's developing that, that's very deep. It's a
Yeah,
very deep process of just developing and really reconnecting with the source at all
yeah,
times, in the good
totally.
and the bad, and highlighting that, and everything is, it's okay. Everything was
Yeah,
planned the way it was planned, the way it was supposed to be, the way Allah wanted it to be, and you're just in this process, and it's a learning process,
exactly,
especially
exactly. And
instead
so
of
just
like
like how,
beating ourselves up about it, and really pushing ourselves down and casting doubts on ourselves,
exactly,
like, what's
yeah,
wrong with me? Well, there's nothing wrong with you.
yeah, nothing. And the doubt is part of the process. Of course, you doubt yourself, and he's expecting you to doubt yourself,
Yeah.
right? And that's the other piece of it. I know we want to kind of like really address, like, how do you do that? It's not that, hey, when you trust that you're just going to have no doubts. Of course you are, but you're just willing to throw your hat, willing to make that jump, because you do trust that, hey, you're made to do this.
Yeah. Um, and a lot of that, I think, gets into the, like, how do we get to develop that trust in ourselves? And I think, you always talk about, you gotta prepare and get yourself ready, right?
Yeah, so as we said, I mean, I think the biggest bulk of it, the big piece of it is grounding yourself in your trust in God. So go back to what we said, get that connection and get that trust like so real for you. Remember how we talked about all of that, and you mentioned it now. Build that trust story, that
Yeah.
Musa trust story for that needs to be. And when you ground yourself so well in it, and you start connecting and you start understanding who you are for him, for God, and then that at one point that trust starts developing, and you just like see it, you see yourself that you're able to get that trust like from that connection. So that's very essential, and that does require building it. So the second piece, as you said, like when it comes to just what else can you do? Well, I mean, there's definitely, especially when it comes to whether going on a spiritual route with God and practicing and all of that, or accomplishing whatever you need to accomplish in life. As you said, you do need to prepare. You do need to do the due diligence. You do need to do the work. You need to get the skills that are needed. Get yourself into the learning. That's part of how he made us. He made us that we learn. He made us that we adapt to things. He made us that we acquire skills and gain skills. So you can't just like sit there and say, it was like, I'm failing because I can't trust myself. Well, I mean, maybe you didn't prepare. Maybe you did not go all the way fully in getting yourself ready in whatever thing that you want to accomplish. That's very important. That's very, like you go 100%. Don't go just like halving it. No, you have to go full work in that. That's the other thing is, I would say also, be willing to take a risk.
Yeah.
You know how we talk about that doubt?
Oh, yeah.
If you have a doubt, don't just go back and just like say, you know what, maybe it won't work. Yeah, maybe it won't work. That's
Yeah.
true. Maybe it won't work, but maybe it would.
Right.
And maybe 3 times it won't work and 5 times it would. So these times that it didn't work, this is where you learn from, and this is where you develop skills, and you just keep going. This is how you're wired. We're created to learn, to make mistakes and learn from them. That's part of our package, our design, how he made us. So he is not, I mean, let's think about it for a second. Even in the law, Islamic law, how God made it in a way, we talk about people, the scholars who create and make the law, we call
Yeah.
them the mujtahid.
Yeah.
Even with the mujtahid, if you are working, creating the law, and you do ijtihad, like you create that and it was wrong, you still get rewarded for that. You have falahu ajr, you would have one reward for it. And if you create it and you make turns out to be the right thing, then you have ajran. So you have, you get the double the reward. So the fact that you're working and you're doing all what you can, that's very important. And that's how, again, it's part of the process of that learning. So the more you have that willingness to take that risk and make that margin bigger, the more you're able to achieve what you want, and the more you will have the confidence, that trust that you were talking about.
Yeah. And I mean, what you're saying resonates with me on a practical level, for sure, even in the past year when it comes
Yeah.
to, having started a business a few years ago, being all in completely, seeing it grow, getting a lot of, awards and accolades for the work that I'm doing. And then COVID hits, and then
we were taking an award per week. Just like, oh yeah, I got an award.
yeah, I mean,
that was awesome. It was just beautiful.
It was really great. But then the unexpected happens, and then COVID hits, and then everything starts falling apart, and like, for me, I had to completely shut down the business. It was no longer financially sustainable. And, at the time it was like, okay, this is just what I have to do. And you just shut it down because it's a financial decision. It's very business oriented. But then it wasn't until afterwards when I kind of sat in it, and I kind of had to go through like months and months of like doubt of like, what the heck happened? Am I a failure? What should I have done differently? What could I have done? Why is it my fault? It just is so many like agonizing thoughts of like, our lives, all of our lives got, switched upside down, and so much has changed. And, you know, taking a lot of time to think about that. But I did spend a lot of time in this doubt area of like, am I a failure, or what was the point of all this?
Yeah,
what was the point of all these years of hard work and effort, and then just to see it all kind of collapse? But, I mean, not to say that there isn't learning lessons, because there's huge. I mean, it took me time to kind of get through. I mean, it hasn't been until, just the past I want to say the past 2 months, where I feel like I'm kind of like pulling it all together, like coming back up on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you grew up tremendously. Like, you learned so much, and you gained so much skill and so much networking. Like, the amount of what you got out of it, I would want to say it's even more. I know it doesn't seem like that, especially financially, but what you got out of that is tremendous.
Yeah. But it's like you have to just go through that process.
Exactly.
And then wade through that whole muddiness of doubt, and trusting myself, like trying to come back to like,
restore that trust.
Restoring that trust in myself of like, no, there is bigger things, there's better, this is just a learning experience. It is what happened, and I've learned a lot from it, but it's just a part of life,
Yeah. And I would want to highlight something from what you're saying, which is great. What is it that had you, I mean, just look, what is it that has you be able to restore that trust and pull yourself and get back on track?
Wow. I don't think it was one thing. It was a series. I mean, I spent months in a deep introspection, and like journaling, and, connecting with so many different things, including a lot of the Good Truth Quran in Me classes, the Seeds of Wisdom, and analyzing, like a lot of self-analysis. But a lot of it, like if I were, going back to when I connect all my dots, this might seem a failure, but like it was a huge, opportunity at the same time. Like, I look back and I'm like, well, I never really failed like, it wasn't, I never think it was ever really a failure. Alhamdulillah, like Allah really had my back. There was always something else afterwards that came my way, or I was thrown into, and something else happened that kind of, it was always a stepping stone for something else, even though it was never, it's not for me, nothing is ever like super clear. It feels like this all the time.
Yeah.
But there is a connection, and it's like you look back and you're like, oh, I see it now, and I see the some threads that pull it through, but, I think it was just, I look back and I'm like, well, I was able to, gain a lot, learn a lot, and Allah put me there for a reason. And
Mhm.
this happened for a reason, and I'm still trying to figure out what the next.
Yeah, and I would want to say, I mean, I've witnessed you several times, like, pulling yourself up and back and just like, okay, I remember we had several conversations when,
Yeah.
throughout our alhamdulillah, friendship and work together. I've seen so many times like, okay, and you were just like sharing how it is for you, and then you pull yourself back and you pull yourself back. And I do want to assert that all of this is coming from something in you, like even what you're saying and the reason why you're going, okay, let me see what the Quran offers. Let me see all of that is coming from something in you. There's that drive in you that's having you be willing to pull yourself back again and restore your trust in yourself again and bring yourself on the life battlefield of life again, despite all of that. Right? It's
Yeah.
the,
Yeah, that's true. And I think it comes down to, I always feel like there's a bigger mission. Like there's something
exactly.
bigger out there.
Yeah,
And I'm always seeking what's that bigger thing. I want that bigger thing.
exactly.
And so coupled with, for me, it is like, I do believe that Allah puts us, here for a reason, and everybody that comes your way is there for a reason, and everything that comes
Yeah,
into your way is for a reason. So I think that's what pulls me back up, is that
yeah,
it is that trust. It's that, like, or that belief that there's something bigger, and I got to go
for
after it.
you.
I gotta go find it. I got to go
Yep.
figure it out. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, you get thrown back into the battlefield like, okay, what's next, guys?
Next round. Ready for next round.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it is definitely that commitment. See, without it, who is willing to take that risk, right? You have that huge commitment. You have that bigger commitment. Like, I'm here to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm here for a cause bigger than my own just my own comfort, or my own just like
Yeah.
doing a successful business or doing something. It's way bigger than that. Your commitment, and I'm witness for that, like your commitment is for the better of humanity. Your commitment is like for doing something that makes a difference for people, no matter what it is. And as you're saying, sometimes it's not even clear, but I know that drive is there and I'm out there after it. And that's what's so important. That's where you're willing to put the risk. That's where you're willing to kind of like take a chance, even though you might fail. That's where you are willing to trust yourself despite the fact that you have tons of doubts. If that's not there, honestly, you won't move from your couch. It's like, okay, Netflix is cool. I can just like
Right.
sit
I'll
there
just
and
sit
do
down
whatever,
and Netflix and chill
and
forever.
just think in my hole and just like, sit there.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason why we would be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that also adds another layer of, like, it's going back to understanding your why, right? Like, why are you here, and reconnecting with intentions.
Mhm.
Call it intentions, Islamically, it's always about,
Yeah,
well, what is your intention for
exactly.
whatever journey you're on, whether it's your life journey, like your practical life journey of
Mhm.
taking a big risk in your career and in your business or whatnot, or even in even on a spiritual realm, if
Yeah,
you're taking that risk of, like, you know what, I'm gonna go all in, and I'm gonna go figure out how do I reach that next level,
yeah,
um, instead of
yeah,
just waiting for it to happen to me. I'm just going to jump in and figure it out, and go along the path instead, like, a
yeah,
more of a spiritual seeking path, instead of um, just waiting for something to happen, right?
totally.
That's a risk
Yeah.
too.
And
It's
again, it's coming from also like no connection with God is not even an option for me. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? Like it's
yeah,
not an option. This is where I'm heading this way and I'm heading. And
yeah,
again, if I know that I'm equipped and that's it, it's happening.
Yes.
Not because I am the so and so person, so like greatly, uniquely something. No, because I'm his creation. I have it in me. I don't care whoever you are. We all do have that. So when you have that understanding, then that's where the commitment comes from. It's like, no, it's going one way
Yeah.
for me.
And whatever path that journey takes you to get to that trust and that,
Like,
a stronger iman, then
mhm,
that's okay, because
totally,
it might look differently for you than it does for somebody else, and the way
absolutely.
that you took or the path that you take. And so I think that's important to, share that.
Mhm,
That's part of your trust in yourself, is saying, as long as your
exactly.
commitment is for Allah and that's what you're seeking, then just follow that and stick to that, and don't worry about this path or that path, or I
How
guess
it looks,
how it
exactly.
looks exactly. And
Yeah.
compare yourself to your friend who might have, followed X, Y, and Z or whatnot, and you tried doing that and it just didn't really look that way for you. It didn't work for you. That's okay.
It is totally okay. That's exactly. And that's what you discovered, right? You discovered the fact that,
Yeah. I
hey, it
discovered,
doesn't have to be a certain way,
right.
or
I,
like what everybody accepts, right? What everybody expects, like falling into the expectations of people or culture or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was something that I muddled in almost 12 years ago.
Mm,
But it took me a few years of muddling in that self-doubt of like,
mhm, mhm.
I want this for myself, or I want this deeper spiritual connection. And I kept following what everybody else was doing. Everybody kept saying, well, if you do this, this, and this, then you should have this like epiphany. And I was like, well, I'm doing all that and I'm not experiencing what everybody else is experiencing. So what the heck's wrong with me?
Mm,
And it
mm,
took
mm.
me a while to kind of get through that junking, that mud of just saying, you know what, my experience is my experience. And
Yeah.
it doesn't need to look like what you're
A
experiencing.
certain way. Yeah,
Yeah, and I can still have
totally.
that. So,
Absolutely.
alhamdulillah, but I know a lot of people are, they get stuck in that, and they're still stuck
Mhm,
in that.
mhm.
And sometimes they end up walking away just because of the expectations in our head of what it's supposed to look like. And we need to get rid of some of those expectations that
True.
it's, there's a million ways to God,
Yeah,
right?
true. All right. Great.
So, and I think like some of you know, the next layer of questions that we have and discussing is really the next layer of trust is trust in people.
Yeah,
I
that's that.
think that's like the big one that
Yep,
many of us struggle with, including myself.
absolutely. You all do, yeah.
Right. And I think that's even another, like, as much as we hold ourselves down,
Yep.
from ourselves of like not trusting yourself and self-doubt and all that, there's another big elephant, which is I don't trust you,
Exactly. That's even like deeper and worse. I'm just like, even if I manage to trust myself, what about, there's no way I would trust people. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we're going to be talking about that next week and start,
Yeah.
uncovering that layer of how do we restore trust, right?
With others. Yeah.
In others, because that's part of the three-part like triangle that we were talking about: the trust in God, the trust in yourself,
Dimension. Yep.
and
Yeah. The dimensions. Yep.
and you need all three. So,
Totally. Yeah.
and it's a
Great.
work in
I'm
progress.
loving this trust journey.
Yeah, the trust journey. So
Yeah.
continue writing and the trust, getting a trust journal. I have so many
Yeah.
journals, but you got to keep,
Totally. And it's worth it. It's really worth it. It's really worth it.
yeah.
Just
So
believe in it, that it happens, and believe, understand who you are and where you're coming from, and it all comes together.
yeah, inshallah.
All right.
So next week we'll talk about trust in people. And so it gives us a week to ponder about what we just talked about, trusting in ourselves and how do we restore trust in ourselves, and then move on to the next level. So
Inshallah.
stay tuned, inshallah.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care.